Thank you for tuning in to the World Builder's Anvil, episode 270. Let's build a loopy character.
Don't know where to start building your fantasy world?
Do you need more? Does it make sense?
Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination.
This is the place where we will prime your mind.
Now, it's time to heat up the forge,
break out the mithril ingots and hammer.
Welcome to the World Builder's Anvil. I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And I'm Michael Miller.
Let's sup from the mug of Java and build. Welcome back, as always. I am the creative Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And I am the creative Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And I'm the creative Michael Miller.
And I am the creative Michael Miller. I feel like
deja vu almost.
Yeah, I feel like I said that before.
You know what's
now you're going to talk long-winded for the longest time, right?
Probably for the next 35 minutes.
I think I've done this before. For almost 200 episodes.
For almost 200 episodes, you felt like this has happened, huh?
So if you haven't been paying attention, we're going to be doing a mini campaign for you guys, for us and for you guys. And it's going to include a time loop. Mm-hmm. So creating the protagonist, the character that I will play for that mini campaign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the next episode we're going to actually build out Michael's plan, because if you were paying attention before, in the previous episode, if you haven't go back. We kind of talk and flesh out what we want to achieve in the campaign and good ideas on kind of things to think about when you're working with time loops. But one of the things was his character is bent on revenge on the king, and so what we'll do in the next episode is we're actually going to build what his plan is, because then I could take that to construct what the first day is going to look like, because I probably won't allow him to kill the king on the first day, because I want him to get stuck on that as a red herring. So
it's going to be the loop will be more than a day long?
No, I think it's going to be about a day long, but I think I might screw with when it starts. It's not exactly a day. It won't be when you wake up, which is what they traditionally are. It's going to be from a certain point, which will be early in the day, but not the first thing. Now, the one thing is we've done 3 episodes that I could find on character development. I realize we've never done an overall one, and we might go do that at some point.
What do you mean, like overall?
Like sort of a like going in depth into character building. We've done one called Think about the 5 steps to great characters, which is we were just kind of talking about things to talk about with characters. And then there was we did an episode called Who Am I? And another one on character traits. Episode 48 and 49, I think, well before Michael was even born. And
well, I mean, you want to get nitpicky. I don't think being grown in a lab counts as being born.
Oh, okay. I didn't want to be rude. I guess I was.
I appreciate the consideration.
I can't help it.
I still celebrate it as a birthday.
Still celebrate it as a birthday. That's very good. Michael, for those of you who don't know, he was born about episode 170, and then 9 episodes later we had met, and he joined right in. So
good fit. Jeff is not ratting me out to the authorities, and they won't drag me back to the lab.
Well, then I have to find another podcast co-host, and that's just a pain. So.
It's just inconvenient. Yeah, I understand.
So, and there's no reward. So, what's the point?
If there was a reward, we might not be talking anymore.
That's right. Yeah. You'll raid like mid-episode, black helicopters descending on Michael.
Everybody's kicking my apartment door in.
Oh my God! He's just trying to distract the guy while the cops move in. Yeah. So, but there are 5 things that you should always kind of think about. Use character archetypes. Come with the strong character archetype as a guide for you. If you don't really know the way you want your character is, because if you get away too far from archetypes, people who read or interact with your fiction might not get it. The problem is they don't really interact with them like real people. The further they are from archetypes, the harder it is for people to recognize them when they're interacting with your fiction. Use quirks to add flavor and uniqueness to develop your personality. Michael's very good at this. It's like in the old system we used to play GURPS. You're required to have like 5, or you can have up to 5 quirks.
You could have up to 5, but 5 tended to be a little heavy. It was hard to play out. I always found it better to have 2 to 3 good ones. Mm-hmm. That way your character doesn't seem like weirdly twitchy, or remember quirks
didn't really affect gameplay.
Well, I was going to say
personality.
Well, I know, but you only got a point but you did get points for them. So they needed to show up in gameplay. So if they didn't, then it wasn't fair to get the point for it.
Whereas, well, I think you're confusing that with disadvantages.
But when you have a character if you're just going by a story, then I think you can get away with a few more quirks, because every now and then you can just write a detail that quirk pops up. It's like, oh yeah, he also, is terrified of aardvarks, something like that.
Where, the obligatory snake scene in every Indiana Jones movie.
Right.
But have an archetype in mind for your character. I don't think Michael has one in mind for his character yet. I don't know how he kind of wants to approach it now, but then use the quirks and then develop strong motivations, and if you ever notice Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's not perfect, but it's a good way to develop characters, because the more base the need is, even if the character doesn't realize they're working off of a base need, the more they will try and achieve it. So I like to kind of think of the hierarchy of needs and what the character is really trying to get versus their motivation, which might not say that they're trying to get security by killing off everyone else in the town. But really, that might be how their brain is working. Be really screwed up brain, and then be able to visualize your characters in your head before you use them. I always say use short stories. Know a character well enough that you don't have to think about them once you start using them. If you use them a lot in a story. If it's a one-off character, I like to develop one-off characters too. It's like that jerk at the convenience store. Whenever you walk into the convenience store and buy your new bags of holding, I usually know why he's always a jerk. And it might be something about you. Maybe he's that way to all people. I like to know why he's that jerk. But I'm not going to know that character as well or much beyond why he's a jerk because it's a smaller character.
I just know he wasn't supposed to be there that day.
Yeah, he wasn't supposed to be there that day. And your character?
No, the convenience store clerk.
Yeah, that's why he's a jerk, because he's there that day. He's actually in the time loop too, and he hates you because of it. He doesn't want you to know.
I think you're missing the joke.
I'm missing the joke. Okay.
The joke is that in the movie Clerks, he wasn't supposed to be there that day, and it's a running line in the movie.
And use story action to define character. Thing is, when you have these parts of your character, if your character is the great warrior, the story needs to somehow showcase that. Maybe even to make fun of it or use it against the character. The thing is, let the character show itself off in the story. Once again, talking about like your protagonist and antagonist, your more major characters. Which is one of the things that makes it doing an ensemble work harder, because it's getting all the characters and making them all feel like a part and essential. And then, but those are the 5 steps to keep in mind as you go through and you're working with characters. And now, kind of from the more of the how to build a character standpoint, let's start off with a bit of background. So, and just as a caveat before we get started. Michael might tweak this as he fleshes this out into an RPG character, but this
I reserve all rights to switch it up.
So it might not even be the same gender or race by the time we get there, but this is kind of a way to get going right now. And so, Michael, background: why is the character here? Have access to the court, and why does he want to kill the king?
Well, access to the court, I think, is something that you're going to have to create. I don't know if you want to make him a noble or whatever.
Well, you can in your background, and that would say you have access into the court because you're allowed into the court. Maybe you're being summoned. I don't know. But
what I have not decided yet, and maybe you can influence or just decide for me, I do want this character to be combat proficient.
Okay, so a noble would make perfect sense for this timeline then.
Yes. So I want the character to be combat proficient because I want us to have a little bit of, combat fun in this one because we have not really done that in any of the other ones we've done. So I think that's true. Yeah. So just as a selfish desire to have that kind of fun, I would like him to be combat proficient. Obviously we're going with vengeance, and what motivates vengeance more than loss. Mm-hmm. So I think he should have either lost his family or village due to a decision to either not defend and not protect. Like the king made a decision to not protect an area where, like, he's got his family there, or there was a call for aid and it was inconvenient to, consider troop movements or whatever, so they didn't do anything about it. Something like that, where the king is directly responsible for making what would otherwise be not a big decision, because it's all about, keeping power and making strategic decisions based on how to hold territory. Yeah. But this was a case that it personally affected my character. So right now, that's what I'm thinking.
Well, it's probably something minuscule in the mind of the king, but it's huge in yours. And
exactly.
What I'm thinking of is you're probably from the South, where in this period of time, there's a lot of wars going on with the Siren, who you're essentially stealing land from. And at least in their mind, you're liberating the land for proper cultivation, and you're
liberating. I always love that.
So I think you're going to be a minor lord. In English terms would be called like a baron.
Baron, okay.
You have a small number of men-at-arms at your disposal. You're in a very rough part, maybe even along the mountains, where it's just really rugged, kind of harsh terrain. And so essentially you do a call for aid because a major Siren movement was going towards your keep. And you're like not even at the keep, you're with the Lord on his campaign. And he it's just strategically not important enough to him. It's like, well, yeah, they're going to take that, but I can actually move to the city, cut their army off from their lands. I'm going to win the war by doing this. But, the keep, which is really far away, which you're not there to protect because you're out with me, is going to probably be sacked, and you've probably lost your family or part of your family, but your domain is raised, so the exact loss can be up to you. Because you could be petting, like, what, it's just my land and my peasants, but now it's like my income is dried up because too many people were killed.
Yeah, but I think he would understand being a loyal, servant to the king. I think he'd understand that sort of stuff has to happen to, maintain power. I think the bigger thing is that, he loses his, I'm going to say young wife and son.
His firstborn son, or his only son.
His only son. And his, maybe they had a difficult time conceiving.
Oh, so he's like older, has one son.
Something like that is what I'm thinking, yeah. And maybe the king's like, well, your wife is young, you can get another. Something like that.
Yeah. Okay. And sort of in the aftermath of the raising. Because I can see where a character might be, but sometimes it's bitter too because you've lost everything. To him, it's one little speck of land. He has lots of barons, under.
Right. To him, he's lost very little.
Mm-hmm. And gained a lot. You've gained nothing, and you don't get any additional land out of it. I mean, it's like, I lost everything. I got no reward, and I was doing my blood oath because Bedrachums, you take a blood oath to your lord. So this is really serious, probably in your own mind, where you've decided to kill him because you've taken a blood oath to die for him. And so, ironically, it's not that uncommon of a thing to happen anyway. but that's something like psychologically that could be caught in your mind too.
The blood oath is not an uncommon thing, or do you mean wanting to kill the king for some reason?
The blood oath, pretty much, it's the way early vassal system would work. Is you take a blood oath, and essentially you're part of the entourage of whoever your lord is, and so your lord happens to be the king. Just because of where you're at. You're kind of in this weird isolated spot. So you actually directly report to the king, so you're part of his entourage, his bodyguard, essentially. And you bring troops, and that's how he gets his army built up. But now you've lost essentially everything. Now you've taken a oath to where you will die before you let harm come to him.
Huh.
But because of what happened was so egregious, you've decided to go back against it. The common, the not so uncommon thing really is even in these scenarios, a lot of times, it's just as common to have lords rebel against vassals rebel against lords. Blood oaths, sound impressive, but they're really a paper tiger.
All right. Well, you go through the stages. You tell me what you want me to come up with each.
So our archetype, I think we're kind of with a lord who's been, or a Liam Neeson lord, we'll call it, as the archetype.
Liam Neeson lord.
Well, because you're going to make him pay. That's right.
Gotcha.
You're proficient at what you do, and he's going to have to pay. Okay, so do you think it's like your wife and kid are your motivations as well?
I think so. I think that, and I think that maybe up until this point, he's never seen how the king looks at everybody under him, kind of more like cattle than people supporting him.
Okay, so you kind of see the flaw in the system now, where
it's like this guy is too callous to be a good leader. Yeah. Like he'll hold land, but what's the point of holding land if you can't keep the people on it alive?
That's right.
You know what I mean? So he starts to see the nature of the way this other guy's thinking about things. He's just so willing to sacrifice people, and that shouldn't be so.
And maybe even being a little bit older, maybe you were around for like the previous king.
Maybe this king is younger than me.
I'm thinking he's younger than you. Their kings are actually elected, so whenever a king dies, essentially the nobility elect the new king. It's not, even though it sometimes falls that way, because it's usually the most powerful lord becomes king. Or who can have the lord in charge of the most powerful coalition, typically becomes king. And so sometimes if you have a tyrant, they can be really powerful, but so many of the other lords hate them that their kid is never going to become king. So sometimes it does pass to a genetic heir, but there's technically an election ceremony. And so maybe the last king was someone who cared a lot about the people, and you kind of spent years developing under him. You've only been with this guy for a little bit since the last king passed away, and what you're seeing is just he just doesn't do it right, and to the point of he's probably evil, and you might even psychologically think this guy is evil and needs to be stopped beyond just your family. It's not just your family; it's multiple families out there. Okay, so now I'm skipping down here. And does your character, and he probably does in this scenario, but does your characters think his motivation is the same as his actual motivation? And I always it's one something I like to think about the character. Sometimes what they think their motivation is really isn't that.
I think it's a little off. I think he thinks it's I'm doing the kingdom a favor. Mm-hmm. Like this is a benevolent act because this guy needs to be taken out for the greater good. Mm-hmm. But in actuality, it's selfish.
It's how he revenges against.
Yeah. I think that's where we're going.
Hmm. Okay. And now let's think a little bit about how does your character look? How do you see him? Think of, Bedraken's.
Visually?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Think of what's the first thing that people would notice about him when they see him?
Well, I mean, it may be generic, but I like the piercing eyes and dark features idea. You know, like maybe he's got like some pretty fierce blue eyes.
Sort of like the gunslinger's eyes, the eyes that sort of look through people, kind of thing, or just attractively piercing.
I think it's just like, you know how when you'll meet certain people and you'll talk to them and they are severely present, and other people are just kind of aloof. Like he is really present. Like
also, whenever you engage with him, he's like looking deep into you, and you feel like he's studying you. Whenever,
like it's almost intimidating just to have a casual conversation with him, just because he is so there.
So, that's kind of what I think of as like a gunslinger piercing gaze, because it's the idea that you're in the present because there's danger in the present. Regardless of you fighting this person, but you're always engaged in the moment, which is what makes you good at the fighting part. And now, give me a second thing. So he's
I mean, he's going to have to be at least physically proficient, if not imposing.
Okay. But not superimposing, or else that would. He doesn't look like the mountain, because
no. Yeah, I was going to say that
he's his size.
Yeah, he's not definitely not the mountain, but he's above average stature.
Okay.
But maybe not much more than above average.
So maybe even average for nobility, but if you put in the peasants who don't eat as well, bigger than average.
Right. But I'm going to say like very solidly built. Like he's not a huge dude, but he's
corn fed, as we like to call them.
Yeah, there you go. Good analogy.
And give me one more thing that someone would notice. First thing they would notice is
just
the way
upon looking at him.
Then just and it doesn't have to be visual, but it's like, what's the third thing that they would notice? You could be really stinky. Wow, this guy reeks like pig shit. I guess this is now an explicit episode. So it's the third thing that they would notice about you when interacting.
Third thing they would notice upon interaction or visual?
Interaction, and I'm assuming all senses are available. Not necessarily, in general, because in general, when you're interacting with someone, you can see them.
That would be a good one. I mean, you think maybe an odd weapon? Like maybe he uses 2 short swords instead of like a broadsword.
Yeah, that would.
Or would you want something a little more personal?
No, it doesn't. Because to me, it's your appearance is the things people notice about you, and that would be something that people would notice about you if you want to use dual swords. Or maybe you'll end up switching the exact weapons or whatever, but the sword would make sense if you're from the South. The tribe that is proficient with swords, the Hiram, are in the South, so a sword would make sense, but typically it's sword and board. And so the fact that you don't use a shield would be noticeable. And you don't have a big honking 2-handed weapon. So yeah, that would definitely be something that would work out. So that's why I say, we've now created a pattern, right? Sort of a piercing gaze, above average corn-fed foe, and he dual wields, which is outside of the cultural norm, and would actually, in a way, being a proficient fighter, it would probably garner him some respect, and maybe some disrespect, but probably not to his face. Well, the respect that you feel like you don't need a shield. You're a little bit older, so you've gone through some battles without a shield, so that garners some respect, at least to your face.
Yeah, maybe there could be a story there. Like maybe he did use a sword and shield, and then had it torn away at some point, and was able to grab somebody else's, and found he did just fine without the shield altogether. Like he was able to maintain balance, and then get in, block just as efficiently with a shield, but also have the ability to strike with the second sword, as opposed to,
it was maybe like a battlefield improvisation.
Exactly.
You're like, wait, I have to focus on this. This actually works for me.
That then maybe became his thing.
Probably would you were a younger whippersnapper. Okay, and now, so that's the first things that you meet. And now, just generically to help flesh it out, what does your character smell like? Just sort of like I don't need necessarily details on this. Is like something unique, but like, does he smell better or worse than people do on average, or just the same?
I would think a little better than the average person, but like the same compared to any noble,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fair point. Better than a pig farmer.
Well, right. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like, I don't think anyone's like, ooh, like,
okay. That's fine.
Lord Farquaad.
How does he sound? Does he have the Barry White voice, or does he have the Michael Jackson voice?
Oh, those are my only options.
No, you can go with anything you want. What's the sound about him?
I mean, I see him as a very masculine character. So I do think he's got, like a deeper voice. I think that, he's not quite Barry White, but, I think that the area we're talking about that he lives in, it's on the outskirts. It's not the most important piece of land, but I think he's still respected in court just because of the nature of the kind of person he is. So it's not like everyone's like, oh, well, he's important because, the land he has is important. So it's good to have him around. It's like, no, like this is a solid guy. He's a good fighter. He's smart,
The troops he brings are solid.
Right. And he's, he's not a wishy-washy person. I think he's very much, he's someone you can rely on.
Let's think like textile feeling. He's going to wear probably a mixture between sort of wool, maybe some furs mixed in when it's cold. That's more information for you. That's just where you live.
Okay.
And you're probably not rich enough where you're buying imported clothes. Just from our descriptions earlier.
So he's probably like a dude of the north, if we're to put it in.
Not so much, but a little bit, right? Think of sort of like, he probably has, a hood, the classic sort of over the shoulder, flip over the head hood, which you can kind of use in a few different fashions or whatever, to help keep you warm. You have furs for when it does get colder, just for where you are. You don't live like you're not like a Northman, but I mean the Northman clothing probably wasn't that far off either. So I don't know how much variety there was.
Well, I'm saying a man of the North, specifically referring to Game of Thrones style of dress.
Maybe, yeah.
I wasn't referring to your Northmen, to be clear.
Yeah. Now, when let's see. Also, now, but do you think like his skin? He says like a veteran, so he's probably like really calloused. Probably lots of not like a scarred eye, but like he's probably got some scars. Yeah, you probably don't see. I would imagine any scars he has are probably on the arms and body. Which, to point out to people, probably is not considered unattractive at this time. Probably just the opposite. He's
probably just common
veteran. Yeah. Anyone over 30 who fights for a living is, that's respect. Personality wise, I think it's just they're sort of a straightforward kind of person. That's what I'm getting from hearing from you.
And I'm going to need a little more time to think about that too.
So flesh out a few ideas you're having.
Say again.
So what are the few ideas that you're having at this point?
Well, I have to make the vengeance believable for him. So for him to want to kill, if he's trustworthy and loyal, he's going to take the blood oath very seriously. So if he's going to go against the blood oath because of vengeance, because of his family death, then we need to make that family death mean so much to him. So his family has to be severely important. He has to be very passionate about his wife and the people that he cares for out there. Even the peasants that work under him. So that's got to be like super huge for him to want to go after a king because of that loss.
And I think too, to build off the predicate that the idea that he needs to make it larger than his family to be able to do it. There was probably whatever the regional town was, which was like probably like 2,500 people kind of, out there. It was probably still a distance from where you were, but we're saying that got raised too. And the king allowed that to happen and your keep to happen. Because that's the way their army was moving, and he wanted to go back, take a larger thing to cut off their army and essentially in his territory. And so when he did that, he allowed, and to put into context, 2,500 people doesn't sound like a lot, but back then, if any of these cities got over 10,000, it would be amazing, just with where they are. And there are a couple little bit larger cities, but 2,500, would be a lot of people to see at one time. So to have this whole town, which was probably the main trading post for where you were, also got raised. That's where he's callous. It's not just to your family, even though they're the underlying motivator. You have this other event attached to it, which is what allows your brain to expand it out to he'll kill everyone in this kingdom if it will get him some more land. And I think we've kind of gotten to this one a little bit here. We know he'll take a stand when it's about his family. What would make your character run away?
Do you have a reason? Like, is he running away in fear, or is he running away?
Well, it's the whole fight or flight thing, right? Everyone, has something that will break them. What's the thing that would freak you out? Maybe it's your snakes.
So are you talking a phobia? Because I mean, he's getting back to him being a good fighter. I think he'd be wise about tactics. So
it's not necessarily in a fight, right? So fight or flight goes off whenever you have an interaction. It could be being in a room full of women is just too much, and he has to back off. There's a time where all people back off.
I'm not sure. Let's see. What is he afraid of? I'm trying to think if there's something like a common. Is there any oddball creature that's common to his area that we can say like, oh, well, he's afraid of these?
Yeah, sure. There are the whistlers, which are there's some old volcanic areas in the mountains, and so right around them are these groups of lizards. They're called whistlers. There's nothing too impressive about anyone. Like if you were to to want to walk across one, you could easily kill it. They're quick, so it'd be like fighting like a cat in speed, where they're quicker than you. But if it ever got close, you could just crush it. And but the thing is, wherever these warm pockets of natural volcanic activity happen are really warm, so there will be these huge pockets, and they go out to hunt, and then they bring food back to their area. So they have a very small area of operation, but there's actually numbers. So there are packs of them. And they're called whistlers because no sound comes from their mouth, but they have like one of those sort of like a triceratops type of shields kind of going back off of their head, and they move it around and it makes whistling sounds. And the belief is people think they actually communicate with it, but it's like, but they'll start doing it as something approaches. You'll start hearing the whistling sounds, even though you might not see them. So they're dangerous, and they definitely kill people. But if you don't get too close to them, they'll never get to you.
Well, would being afraid of such a thing be considered cowardice, or
being afraid of anything at this time in fighting would be considered cowardice?
Because that doesn't seem character appropriate. because I wouldn't want that to get around the court. You know what I mean?
Like I said, it doesn't necessarily. Well, yeah, but sometimes flaws are that way. But other times, remember, this isn't necessarily just about fighting. Fight or flight could be, and you don't like diplomatic exchange. So it's anything that really just sort of repulses your character to make him want to get out of the scenario. Maybe it is broccoli at dinner. It's.
I think I'm gonna have to come back to this one. Like I can't think of something that I think that would be appropriate right this second.
Okay. And that's actually a good point whenever you do these things, like
I don't want to shoot. I don't want to ham fist something together just to put something on paper, even and then hate it. You know what I mean? So.
My God, he doesn't eat healthy because he's afraid of vegetables. That was a mistake. He died of a heart attack on day 14.
Right. Why do I have scurvy? Dude, you got to eat something.
Now. What causes your character to compromise? Is there something, and maybe your character is stubborn, but if he can see truth, he'll then relent, or it's just hard to get him to do that. What's the thing that gets your character to go, you know what? Let's make a deal.
I think, when it's logically, it's like, okay, well, I think to keep people alive, he would compromise things.
Okay.
So it's like, oh, we have to take this hill, but, if we let this hill go, then all these troops that I got with me are going to live, and we can get it tomorrow.
We'll find a way to take it back. Okay.
Right.
So you'll follow the spirit of the orders, but not necessarily the orders. And these are some things that Michael will work out, I think, as he's building sort of his character itself. But then, it's things to think about are what are the traits? Is he stronger than average? Is he smarter than average?
Yes, and yes.
Is he healthier than average?
Yes.
Is he dexterous more than average? Yes. Yes on everything. Yes on all of those things. He's like Bruce Wayne back then.
Well, he's a lord for a reason. I'm not saying he's the most powerful one, but he's a badass. He has to be a badass.
Let's see. And then what it's always good to think about flaws and strengths of your character. Like in GURPS, they call them advantages and disadvantages. And I always like to have, if I have a big advantage or a big flaw, I like to have something related to it on the other side. And you don't always necessarily have to do that, but you see that a lot with Greek heroes where they're really strong and determined and will never stop. But, then Odysseus becomes stubborn and will do things that he shouldn't, and he knows he shouldn't because he's stubborn. It's the same will that gives him the determination to keep fighting when he should. So it's, sometimes it's the things that make you the hero that are your biggest drawbacks as well, too. So that's something to think about in general. We're not going to flesh those out at this moment, but
you don't want to talk about that
if you have ideas, we can. But
I mean, what kind of fits into what we're going so far is like maybe he just doesn't see the big picture. Mm-hmm. Whereas a king might be a little callous to let a little area go. It's like, look, no matter what, people are going to die. Mm-hmm. But I'm trying to keep the most people alive.
Mm-hmm. And the truth might be the king probably knew more information than you did. Maybe he felt they could not handle the army.
Right. And he also might not be callous and cavalier at all. Maybe he is that way around the men.
Maybe you just hate youngins.
Well, maybe he's like that around the men for the sake of maintaining the confidence of the military as opposed to breaking down. Like maybe the king does heartfelt really feel every loss, but he just doesn't allow himself the comfort of showing that because he still needs to appear to be a strong military leader. And it might make him come across as callous, but for the sake of keeping everybody's confidence up, he doesn't allow it. He doesn't grant himself that. Whereas
that kind of goes to the idea where in this culture, any sort of martial fear would make you look bad. So I would imagine that there's probably truth in what Michael's saying and the way a lot of people react, over the top, oh, I'm afraid of nothing kind of stuff, to the point where I'm not afraid of losing people. I think that would actually be a very common thing. And maybe there's inside the king, there's actually some martial fear. It's like maybe he's horribly afraid of being shot with an arrow. Who knows what it is?
Well, right, but the bigger point here is the downfall of my character, which would be his lack of seeing the really big picture. Like while his family's passing is sad and tragic, it might have been necessary to keep thousands more alive, unfortunately. So, but he doesn't see it that way. He just sees it as a betrayal of his loyalty.
Yeah, very good. Which is fair. And then of course quirks. Those little personality things. You're always snapping your fingers when you think. You're playing with your sword hilt. Whenever you talk to someone, you place your hand in their face and rub up and down. That would probably be an annoying character toward.
That'd probably be pretty big.
Now, eating sentient beings is not considered a quirk, just to remind you. Michael has a problem where he often thinks cannibalism is actually a quirk and not really a bad thing, so I have to remind him.
In some societies, cannibalism is a quirk. In others, it's a major disadvantage.
Yeah. And here it's a disadvantage in our culture and in the culture that we're dealing with. They would not look positively upon cannibalism.
I don't intend to take cannibalism, Jeff.
Okay, but I'm just saying, if you do, it's not a quirk, it's a disadvantage.
I'm letting it go.
But then,
what brought cannibalism to mind?
Just my brain.
Fair enough.
If I understood it, I'd write a book about my brain, and I could maybe help solve many problems in the world. And now, do you have an idea of the name you want, or nothing at this point?
No, I haven't gotten to anything.
Okay.
We might have to have a discussion about traditional Badrachim names.
Well, if you come up with a name, we can. I like to do is I take the meaning and then I can sort of translate out what it would be. So, kind of come up like you want to be William Smith or whatever, because those are names you like. I can turn that into Badrachim, which will be much longer and impossible to pronounce. So we'll call you P or something like that. But yeah, it's just the way it rolls. Okay. So that's really kind of all we got here. I did not put the event or the worldbuilding task in here. So I'll just go ahead and I'll let Michael guess. You'll probably guess correctly the worldbuilding task.
The worldbuilding task is probably going to be something around building a character. Maybe go through the old episode. What do you call it? The five. Were they rules or what was it?
5 steps to great
steps. Characters. Yeah, 5 steps. Maybe go through the 5 steps to great character building.
Yep, and then go ahead and create a character. Get to know them, and then for the real world task of the day, go to the Undercroft. I'll try and create a thread about this on Monday if I remember, and or James will, because he's really good at creating posts for me.
Thank you, James.
Yes, thank you so much, James. You've been doing fabulous. Share your character in the Undercroft group. So go to facebook.com/groups/Undercroft. There's 3 questions. There's really only one you have to fill out seriously, which is, will you spam the group, essentially? And the quick answer is no. And sometimes it takes a second for it to pop up, but you just make sure to say no.
Yeah, so when you request to join, wait a moment, wait for those 3 questions to pop up, because what we have a lot of times is people will try to join, and then they'll miss the questions, not intentionally, but they'll miss the questions, and then we do not have a way to resend you the questions.
Well, so we have a way. Is we have to delete you from the group, and then
that's what I was about to say. Is you have to then be deleted from the group to then re-get the question. So if something like that should happen, you try to join, but then you're denied, try to join again, please, and make sure to answer those questions. And to be honest, Jeff and I really like when people answer those questions funny. The second one, it has to be answered seriously. We don't want to make sure that there's no spammers or bots coming into the group. But the other questions are we welcome humor in those. So they can be taken seriously, but they're not intended.
It's unfortunate that they don't let us look at those anymore, because it used to be fun. You could kind of go back in and see ones that you didn't see, join the group and read the responses, or say, oh, go check out the responses of so and so. But we can't find out. We don't know how to do that anymore.
What if we do some sort of copy and paste when somebody new comes in? That way, that way the answers can be saved and enjoyed for the future.
No, it's too much work.
No? All right, then.
All right. So everyone have a great day, and we will see you in a week. Thank you so much for listening to the World Builders Anvil.
We would love it if you would share the World Builders Anvil with 2 of your friends.
And so would they.
If they are unfamiliar with podcasts, then you get to introduce them to the wonderful world of podcasting.
Take them to Stitcher or iTunes, or best of all, just send them to our website, www.gardul.com.
That's GARDUL.com.
Now strike while the mithril's hot.